afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Picciott, certified financial planner and owner of the Liberty Advisor. And today I wanted to talk about why a financial advisor would leave a six-figure practice in order to be able to recommend blockchain and cryptocurrency assets. I think one of the biggest reasons is blockchain allows people to cut out all the middlemen. So think of, the banks, the credit cards, the Western Unions of the world, the brokerages, Wall Street. All those things are able to be completely eliminated through the blockchain. Now, I think one of the best examples of this, especially in my industry, is right now there's a company out there that can actually tokenize securities. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to buy the S&P 500. Today you've got to go through either your broker or you go through a brokerage. You've got to wait 3 days for your trade to settle. And in those 3 days, there's a lot of things that can happen. But now there's a company that can have a digital representation of that stock in a token format. And the importance of this is that now you can actually completely bypass Wall Street, completely bypass all the big banks and brokerages. And if you want to trade it with your friend down the street, you can do so where the fees would cost almost next to nothing, and it would do so almost instantaneously. Now, what this also helps do, and it brings me to point number 2, so no longer will you have companies that are out there doing things like naked short selling, which is an illegal practice where you bet against the company's stock when you don't actually own the company's stock. Now, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing that, a lot of bad actors that are doing that. And right now, with the current financial system where they go and they pool everybody's money together and make these huge block trades, it's very, very hard to prove this stuff that's going on. But through the blockchain, where you've got an immutable ledger that you can't change, you can see exactly how this is happening, and it makes for catching these people much, much easier, or for making algorithms to have these actions get stopped. And what I mean by immutable ledger is immutable means it can't be changed, and ledger means it's basically a fancy word for trying to keep track of something. So like think of like a scorecard you see like in the upper tile or maybe lower tile of a baseball or basketball game. It's just a way to keep score, but it does so in such a fashion where, I think the best example I saw of this is somebody once said, it's sort of like when you're trading baseball cards as a little kid where, you've got your $2 and your friend has their baseball card and you guys, go and you guys, give it to each other and you say 1, 2, 3 and you let go. Well, that's sort of what blockchain is. I don't want to this is not a video explaining what blockchain is. It's more explaining what some of the benefits are. Now, this brings me to number 3. All currency right now is already basically digital. Probably 90% of it's already digital, moving its way to 100. So in the future, you've got 2 options. You can have one form of digital cash that's tracked, traced, surveilled. The government that has the ability to give you everything also has the ability to take everything away. They can, shut you off digitally. And just imagine once that number is at 100%, and then, a tyrannical government in the future, snap of the fingers, could just completely shut you off, wipe you out. And like I said before, you're going to be tracked, traced, surveilled, put you on a grid to then be able to data mine you. So just think of the big Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal that recently broke out where, no surprise, I'm sure, to anybody that's watching this right now, but your data is being used against you. And so this is something where blockchain helps prevent that. And there's companies that are out there right now that are working on ways to be able to protect your data and for you to say, hey, if I want to give my doctor, this data for X amount of time, then we can do that. But let's say I've got a summer home somewhere else, then we can also then be able to, have that data go to your other doctor that might be at your summer home or winter home or, what have you. Now with blockchain, the reason why that's better for cash, and again, right now I consider it a crypto asset. As a currency right now, yes, a currency is just a medium of exchange, but it's probably too volatile to be used as a currency at the moment, but it does have great transfer mechanisms and does work actually much better than the current system that we're currently seeing. But so it comes down to, do you want money that's tracked, traced, and surveilled, or do you want money where it's basically in the hands of the people, it's private, and you don't have to get government permissions to be able to do this. Now, the 4th reason that I like Bitcoin, these aren't really in any particular order, is that it actually can lower portfolio volatility. And where I'm getting this from, I know it sounds absurd, is that Fundstrat, which is a company owned by Tom Lee, founded by Tom Lee, who is a former JP Morgan analyst, showed that if you had your typical 60-40 portfolio, 60% stock, 40% bonds, that actually what would happen is if you were to take 2% and allocate the portion that wasn't stocks to Bitcoin, that what it did, so now you'd have 58% stocks, 2% Bitcoin, 40% bonds. what would happen now is that your overall portfolio volatility, so how much goes up and down, actually decreased. The max drawdown, so the biggest loss someone in that portfolio experienced, actually decreased, but the overall return greatly increased. Now they did this all the way through. They showed an example where somebody put all the way up to 10% in crypto, and I do have this on another podcast entitled "Say What?" Bitcoin can actually lower your portfolio volatility, so I would recommend checking that out. And then the last reason is that the current system basically amounts to nothing more than high-tech slavery. So what I mean by that, and I do have a much more extensive video on this, actually not too long, it's about 7 minutes long, called "Why We're All Slaves to Central Bankers." And why this is important to understand is that the very first dollar that was created, December 23rd, 1913, had about 4% interest on it, which meant when the Federal Reserve, I guess at the time, they probably didn't have computers, but at the time when they printed out the very first dollar, that was backed by a treasury bond or treasury note. That treasury bond or note had interest attached to it. So it meant that the very first dollar that was lent out into existence had, let's call it 4% interest, which meant at the end of year one, you owed $1.04. So how do you ever pay back $1.04 with $1? Well, you've got to borrow another dollar. And so at the heart of this entire system, all of it is built on this high-tech fraud where you can actually never escape it. You can never pay off all the debt because the money is debt. And you can get away with this for a very, very long time, and we have gotten away with it for a very, very long time. But now we're starting to see some of these systems collapse because the interest is getting so high that that there's at some point our kids or even us are going to be. I'm young enough, and a lot of people watching this are young enough where we're going to be slaves to this debt. And so the Fed is going to have to artificially keep rates low forever, because if rates were what they were in the 80s, it would be game over instantaneously. And some of the other things that are going on to help basically bring this closer to an end is all of America's posturing geopolitically is helping bring Russia, China, the BRICS, so Brazil, Russia, and India all closer together to be able to bypass the dollar. China recently came out with their petro yuan. I do have an article on this on Steemit called I believe this is called the petro yuan. I don't have too many articles on there, so you can look me up at Tim Picciott, Picciott. For more information and for a lot of good information on, I've got a good crypto reference guide on my website at thelibertyadvisor.com. I've got blog posts on Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash and understanding what was going on there, and as well as why, basically comparing Bitcoin to the US dollar. And again, all this is from the lens of somebody that's a certified financial planner, someone that's a hardcore libertarian, and someone that wants to decentralize everything. But, this is setting up for a future that is a much, much better one than the future that we had. And so it's basically people that are like you watching this today, we have a chance to help change the world. And so that's why I was willing to risk everything just so that way I could promote blockchain. So I'm going to have a company that's created the Liberty Advisor, and what we're doing is helping people through a subsidiary called Crypto Self-Direct, where we can have basically anything inside of a retirement account. So, if you already have a retirement account, you don't want to have to pull all of that out of the system because of the tax implications. And we do have information also that shows, somebody that took all their money out of the system versus somebody who didn't versus somebody who converted their money to a Roth IRA versus rolling it to an IRA, and it shows that the latter two examples that they're much, much, much better off. And actually, in the Roth version, they have tax-free gains in that case. And assuming that the price of crypto keeps going up, they would be much, much better off in that example. We also have an estate planning company where if you were an early crypto adopter or if you have massive crypto gains, what we can do is help get that money into the real economy. I do have a presentation that we gave on this that you guys can find. Again, everything's at thelibertyadvisor.com. Thank you for watching, and this is why a certified financial planner would leave a six-figure practice just so he could promote blockchain assets. Thank you.
A good friend of mine, Tim Picciott, he's a financial advisor at Scottsdale. We'll be speaking at the TDV event. Be able to bring the crypto into the system. How would you be able to do a foundation of trust, of this, of that, and so on? And Tim was at the party, and I go, Tim, what up? He's been spending months that he's getting ready to present to you guys Monday on how you can take your crypto and not pay capital gains on it, not have taxes on it. I'm going, man, you need to talk to Tim, okay?
Well, our next speaker is a person who has impressed me quite a bit. I met him when I was the MC up at the Aspen Conference in Aspen, Colorado. And Tim is a guy who's a certified financial planner. He knows what to do. And he's going to talk today about having some self-directed IRAs. He's going to talk about using crypto for that and how you can avoid capital gains tax with charitable trusts and more. He's the kind of guy you want to know and want to be around. Tim Picciott, join me in welcoming him now.